European leaders have taken to social media to express condolences and to condemn acts of terror in the Russian capital, Moscow, yesterday evening. About 133 people are confirmed dead, with more than 100 patrons wounded when gunmen in military fatigues stormed the Crocus City concert hall and opened fire randomly. Now, Russian police say they've so far arrested 11 people, including 4 gunmen. The transnational Salafi jihadist group ISIS has claimed responsibility for the brazen attack. Now, for more on this discussion, we're now joined by Professor Olexiy Haran from the National University of Kyiv Mohyla Academy. Professor Haran, thank you so much for joining us this evening on News at Prime. What's the reaction coming out of Kyiv to this news?
Well, we are trying to understand what's really happened, and because there are different contradicting versions. But I would like to start with how it will be used. This tragedy will be used by Putin. I think it will be used for further repressions inside Russia, for general mobilization for the war in Ukraine, more bombardments of Ukraine. So Putin would use it to try also to create some sympathy towards Russia from the West, from the global South, and definitely there are condolences, definitely. But the question is actually how it happened, how it could happen, because we know that the United States and some other embassies, they want Putin, that there are evidences that some terror attack will happen. And the question is also how it could happen, because, you know, to imagine that 4 people in camouflage with submachine guns, they are entering this Crocus City hall where there is its own security. How could it happen? You know, so a lot seems to be strange. Definitely, but by the way, I think also that somehow it will be used to divert attention from the crimes Putin is doing in Ukraine. Why? Because 2 days ago, Russians bombarded Dnipro hydroelectric station, which is one of the largest in Europe. Russians have already blasted Kakhovka Dam, which created huge ecological catastrophe. If something is happening in Dnipro hydropower station, it will have also, you know, huge influence on the ecology of the region, on export of Ukrainian grain and so on and so forth. But by the way, did many in the world notice it? This news that Russia is bombarding Dnipro power station. I think it wasn't in the news actually, but this terror act is in the news. So Putin may try to use it, as I have said, to use it as a tool to create some sympathy from international community to Russia.
And
but by the way, my own version is, you know, there were versions about Islamic State. Russians started to talk about Ukrainian connection. So for us it was clear that Russians will try to point at Ukraine, because the craziest is lie, the more chances people will believe it. It was said by Nazi Minister of Propaganda Goebbels, notorious Goebbels. So my version is actually, but it's not in the interest of Ukraine, because it will give more justification for Putin to connect more war crimes in Ukraine by bombarding Ukraine. My version is that actually it could be done as a pressure from some of security forces inside Russia to push Putin to more aggressive policy. I would not exclude this fact, that this is also part of internal struggle struggle in Russia.
And to your
Putin was
point,
definitely...
Professor Haran, just to come in there, to your point, and the analogy that you're making as well, and some have questioned that, for a state like Russia that is quite big on surveillance as well, some have said it is quite questionable and concerning that they wouldn't have known and been able to prevent such an attack.
Yes, there are many questions. So where was Russian security? And I think it explains why Putin was silent for half a day. And actually, during his speech, he didn't look very, very persuasive. So, as I said, there are many questions to what has happened. And we can elaborate on different versions. One of the versions also, look, Russia is waging the war. So there's a lot of weapons inside Russia, near the front line, in the territories of Russia as well. And some of these weapons may be not controlled. Russians have veterans who are coming from the war. Some of them have post-traumatic syndrome, and we don't know what will be in the mind of these people. So this is one more version. But I prefer the version that it was organized by part of Russian security services in order to push Putin for more aggressive policy. It happened already, in the history of dictator regimes, like in Nazi Germany and also in Russia itself. Remember how Putin rose to power. There were blasts of residential buildings in Moscow. Immediately, Chechen separatists, they were accused. And Putin used it to continue to start the new war in Chechnya. However, there are many, again, this story was very unconvincing, and many people believe that actually it was provocation from Russian security to create an atmosphere where Putin would be elected as president. I'm talking about the year of 2000.
And just bringing it back, using that example as well, Putin just won the Russian elections by a landslide. Does the timing of these attacks and his landslide win bode any suspicion for you?
Look, we don't know. Because, look, it's very probable that this act was planned in advance of Russian presidential elections. But because there was information from Western side, from Western intelligence about the terrorist acts, it may postpone this act for after election. But again, we don't know. But as I have said, because we have the struggle of power behind the Putin inside Russia. Yes, Putin had landslide victory, and we know why he had landslide victory, because there were no real elections. Putin was actually the one candidate. All other candidates were manipulated. There were no candidates from the real opposition, so they were excluded from the ballot. So it's clear. But now maybe, this struggle within security forces for the influence on Putin, it continues. So this terror act,
we're going to keep our eye on that one. We definitely will keep our eye on that one. But thank you so much for joining us this evening. That's all we have time for, unfortunately, for today. We look forward to having you back next time. That was Professor Olexiy Haran from the National University of Kyiv Mohyla Academy.